The Prophecy Club, a nationwide television program, a nationwide radio program. The Prophecy Club also hosts approximately 40 major city meetings per month. Our mission is to inform Christians of current events that confirm Bible prophecy, expose the evil devices of Satan, warn believers what is coming to America, challenge people to stop sinning and turn to Jesus with all their heart, and to provide a platform for Christian speakers to be heard.
It's a bald-faced lie.
Using their positions of power and authority in our own government.
The greatest oil field in the world is at the southwest end of the Dead Sea. He said, son, you must warn this nation.
And now your host for the Prophecy Club, Stan Johnson.
Welcome to the Prophecy Club. Your topic for tonight is chronological order of the prophecies in the Jubilees. Joe Dumond has been studying Bible prophecy and the Jubilee cycles for over 20 years. He will tell us where the Jubilee cycles say we are in prophecy and why we have global warming and terrorism. Joe says the Jubilee cycles portray the chronological order of events for the next 37 years, such as the year 2010, bringing 7 years of disease pandemics. 2024 portrays the 7-year cycle of the fall of America. 2030 portrays the 7-year cycle of the return of the lost tribes to Israel. 2033 portrays the tribulation ending, and 2045, however, portrays the beginning of the Millennium. He is not setting dates, just teaching what the Jubilee cycles portray. I think you'll find this talk incredible, amazing, and very, very much worth your time. Would you please let me welcome your speaker tonight, Joseph Dumond.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joe Dumond. I'm from north of Toronto, Canada, and I've been working on this for a little while, and I'm here to show you what I've learned here tonight. So we're going to get right into it. You didn't come to learn about me. So first thing I need you to understand is when I'm talking about Israel tonight, this is who I'm talking about. This is not Israel. This is Judah and Benjamin. They are 2 tribes of the 12 tribes of Israel. So when we talk about Israel tonight, I'm talking about not that, but these 2. Israel is the England and the United States. That is who Israel is, Ephraim and Manasseh. So that is, what I'm talking about, the things we're going to talk about tonight is mostly the curses, and they apply to England, the United States, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and those countries. So this is very important to understand, because if you think it only applies to the state of Israel, then you're going to be missing a whole lot of prophetic teachings tonight. If you want to know more about it, you can buy the book by the Tribes by Yar Davidi and the 10 Lost Tribes by Stephen Collins. 2 great books, teach you a lot about it, which is a whole other teaching that I'm not just going to get into tonight. The reason you're here tonight is you want to see this chart. This chart ties in everything I'm going to be talking about: terrorism, drought, pestilence, war, captivity. And it starts in 1996, and that's where we're going to begin. But before we get there, you got to understand how we got to that position. So I'm going to teach you about the lead up to it, the understanding of it, how we know which year is a Jubilee year. Another thing you need to understand is I am not Jewish. I'm not trying to pretend to be Jewish. The holy days I'm going to be talking about are not Jewish. These are for all men. Israel, those 2 countries that you saw, the 10 tribes of Israel, were to teach that to the whole world. They did not. So now they're going to pay the consequences of it. But you need to understand the holy days and the Sabbath that I'm talking about are not Jewish. They are for everybody. And a lot of people don't understand that, and they think it's a Jewish thing. It's not. This talit is not Jewish. It's something special to me, and that's why I wear it. But I am not Jewish, and I'm not trying to be that way. I love the Jews, but these holy days are for all mankind in every nation. Another thing to do, everything I say tonight you must prove. Do not believe me. I work construction. I'm a ditch digger. I work hard. So I'm not your pastor and I'm not your rabbi. Prove everything that I say. Prove everything that I'm going to show you. Because all I'm going to do is read the stuff right out of my Bible. So blow yours off, find it underneath your bed, get it out, and read it. It's not that hard. When you're sitting in the washroom, you have time to read. Everyone goes there for at least a half hour every day. Do it. Most people think they're good. Most people consider themselves good, but they don't. They compare themselves to everyone else. So if you go into a prison, everyone in prison is basically good. They're not guilty. But the guy down cell block 38, he's the bad guy. He's the one we got to watch out for. But the rest of us in prison are not guilty. So if you bring a guy back from 1844 into our time today, he will be shocked at how we treat our women and how the children are so disrespectful. When I left Toronto to come down here, on the news that week was an article about girls in high school are going to go through school, and before they graduate, they're going to be sexually molested or assaulted or grabbed or fondled, and it's guaranteed. And they all just say, get used to it. It's normal. The new normal in our society is to become used to bad things. A horse thief used to be hung on a tree. Now we've got locks and keys and computer programs that keep them out. And when we do catch them trying to break into our car, we just give him a slap in the back and spin him through the stall, and he comes back out the next day. The new normal is to accept crime. That's our society. If you're a frog and you're put into a pot of water, you'll stay there. As you crank up the water, it gets hotter, the frog doesn't leave. He doesn't know that it's getting bad. He doesn't understand that. You, ladies and gentlemen, are the frog in the pot of water. And I'm here to tell you tonight that you are getting cooked and you're near done. You're almost dead. And you'll see that tonight. You need to decide by what standard you're going to use. And that standard is not man's, because man's standard is the same as the one at the prison. It doesn't work. The new normal is to accept everything that's bad. We have to use Yahweh's standard. Now I say Yahweh, you can say God. I say Yeshua, you can say Jesus. It's not a big deal. Don't let that be a stumbling block to hearing what I'm saying tonight. It's just my preference. Doesn't make me better than you. In Ezekiel 18:4, the soul who sins shall die. Most people read right over it, and Yahweh knew that, so he repeated it real quick. The soul who sins shall die. A lot of people say they don't believe in the Old Testament. They're a New Testament church. So Paul knew that, and he says, for the wages of sin is death. Same thing, 3 different places. So my question is, when I read stuff like this, I always ask myself, well, what's it saying? What is sin? Sin is 1 John 3:4. Whoever commits sin transgresses also the law, for sin is the transgression of the law. We continue in 1 John, and hereby do we know that we know him if we keep his commandments. He that saith, I know him, and keepeth not his commandments is a liar, and the truth is not in him. So sin is a transgression of the law, and that is the law, the 10 Commandments. What is the law? Matthew explains it when Yeshua answers a question that he was asked. What is the great commandment in the law? Yeshua answered, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. This is the first and great commandment. Everyone knows that. Everyone agrees with that. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. So on these 2 commandments hang all the law and all the prophets. Very simple to understand. And it comes right from Yeshua's own mouth. So now we need to know what law is he talking about. Well, the second part of that is to love your neighbor as yourself. Honor thy father and thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't be a false witness. And don't covet. Those are the last 6 commandments of the 10 Commandments. But this is the second great commandment that he's talking about. The first great commandment tells us how to love Yahweh. They are summed up by Yeshua in Matthew 22:37, but they are explained in Exodus 20, verse 3. You shall have no other gods before me, no carved images, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, and to remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. And that's how you love God. That's how you love Yahweh. So there's one for Yahweh and one for man. The soul that sins shall die. Sin is a transgression of the law. The law is the Ten Commandments. Now I'm going to repeat this a number of times because I know you as Israelites. Israelites are like Dutch people. Wooden shoes, wooden head, wouldn't listen. So Yahweh repeats things many times in the Bible because He knows how thick-headed we are. Stiff-necked, rebellious people. Matthew 18:6. But just to sum that up, if you deceive the least of these little ones, in whatever teaching you teach, if you're teaching them a lie, it would be better for you to tie a millstone around your neck and go jump in a lake. So I read that to myself every time I teach something. You do not want my opinion. You do not want the opinion of somebody standing up here. So that's why I read scriptures and try and stick very close to them. Because I don't want to be accused of misleading anybody. Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill. For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass away, not one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled. Whoever therefore shall break one of the least of these commandments shall be, and teach men so, shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. So there you have it. Which of those 10 commandments is the least important one? I always thought it was coveting. It's not that bad. We see it on commercials every day to want this and to want that. So if it's not that bad, well, that's not too bad a thing. But a lot of people disagree. Peter said in 2 Peter 3:16, Paul wrote of things hard to understand which untaught and unstable people twist to their own destruction, as they also do the rest of Scriptures. He's talking about what Paul was saying in the Old Testament. Paul only read the Old Testament for the New Testament. But people twist that to their own destruction. They use the law that Yeshua fulfilled the law, therefore we don't have to. So this is not a good thing. The law that Yeshua fulfilled was the death penalty. He was hung on a tree. No man is to be allowed to hang on a tree overnight. He became a curse for our sins. So when you're accursed, there's a certain penalty. He was also accused by the high priest of blasphemy. And when he does that, there is also a penalty for that. That's the penalties that he fulfilled. If you don't know what it is, you can go back and read it in Deuteronomy. What is the penalty for blasphemy and for the accursed? The law, ladies and gentlemen, is not done away. The soul that sins shall die. Sin is a transgression of the law. The law is the 10 Commandments. We're going to repeat this. Why is the fourth commandment the one that no one wants to obey? Which is basically it, because you know adultery is wrong. You know that stealing is wrong. You know that having 5 gods is wrong. But when we come down to the fourth commandment, that's the one everyone disagrees with and says that's the one that's nailed to the tree, or that's the one that's done away. So why is it that that one is the one that is to be, Satan's trying to hide? In Daniel 7, Satan seeks to change times and law. The fourth commandment is a set period of time, from Sabbath Friday night to the end of Saturday night at sunset. Sunset Friday night to sunset Saturday night. That is the Sabbath. That's a period of time. It's also a law. It's part of the 10 Commandments. It hides the truth. So what is the truth that he's trying to hide by not having you keep this law? Well, in Exodus 13, it shall be for a sign unto you upon your hand, and as a memorial between your eyes. These are the two things it's going to show you. It's a sign. Speak thou also unto the children of Israel, and say, verily my Sabbaths, plural, you shall keep. It is a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you may know that I am the Lord that doth sanctify you. So there were babies born in every hospital across this country last night. So the generations are still being produced. So it has not ended. What is the sign? The Sabbaths, plural, more than one. Exodus 31, wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. So what part of forever stopped somewhere in history? Forever means forever. It's like forever and forever and forever and forever and forever and forever. It's just forever. So if you don't know what forever is, ask your child. It's forever. They just don't stop. And these words which I command thee this day shall be in thy heart, And thou shalt bind them upon thy hand, as a sign on your hand, and between your eyes. Therefore you shall lay up these words of mine in your heart, in your soul, as a sign on your hand, and as frontlets between your eyes. That doesn't mean you get a box and put it on your forehead, or a box and put it on your hand. It's the Sabbath that is the sign, the way you think and the way you live, because your hands is how you make your living. That's what it's talking about. Therefore, again, therefore ye shall lay up these words of mine in your heart, in your soul, for a sign on your hand and between your eyes. He has now said this about 4 or 5 times because he knows you. Wooden heads wouldn't listen. Stiff-necked, rebellious people. This happens to be the exact same thing that Yeshua said in Matthew 22. Your heart, your soul, and your mind. That's how you're to love Yahweh with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your mind. He's quoting Deuteronomy. The same things we've just looked at 4 times. In Revelations, we can read where Satan says that he's going to put a mark on your hand and on your forehead. So what is it that Satan is trying to do? He's impersonating Yahweh. He's giving you a different sign. What's Yahweh's sign? His Sabbaths and his holy days. So what's Satan's? Something different, other than the Sabbath or the holy days. So something else besides that. In Leviticus 23, we're told what those holy days are. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, concerning the feasts of the Lord, which ye shall proclaim to be holy convocations, these are my feasts, more than one. Then the very next verse, it starts to list them. The 7th day, weekly Sabbath. The first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The last day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread. The Feast of Pentecost. The Feast of Trumpets. The Day of Atonement, which is a fast day. The Feast of Tabernacles. And the 8th day of the feast, or the 8th day feast. These are the only holy days that Yahweh proclaims. If you have a holy day that you keep and it's not here, you need to go back and double check. Is Halloween up here? No. Is Ramadan up here? No. Is whatever holy day that you hold sacred listed here? If it is, we should all be keeping it. If it isn't, then you need to reconsider what Yahweh says are His holy days. This is very simple stuff. It's just basic reading in your Bible. We have to know which day is the weekly Sabbath because that's become a problem to some people. I'm from Canada, so one of the things that all Canadians do, as you all know, we are all able to speak French. Well, not true, but I just happen to be able to. The Babylonians tell us how to keep track of the holy days, strangely enough. They named the days of the week, and they named them after the planets. So you all know how they did that. The brightest object in the sky was the sun. And they named the first day of the week after the sun, Sunday. The second brightest object is the moon. And they named the moon after Moon Day. Or in Latin, Lune Day, which is lunar. Tuesday, we're going to switch over to French. Mardi, Mars. Mercredi, Mercury, Wednesday. Jeudi, Jupiter, Thursday. Friday is Vendredi, Venus. But Saturday is named after Saturn. Right? Why is Saturday named after Saturn? When you look at all the planets, they all go by fairly quickly, and each one's moving each night. You can see it moving from one place to the next. But when you look at Saturn, Saturn is the planet that doesn't move. It seems to stay in that same spot for a very, very long time. Saturn is a planet at rest. So the planet at rest was named in honor of the day of rest. And that's how we arrived at that. And it's done by the Babylonians. So that's a great thing. That takes us right back to the time of Nimrod. So now we know which day is the day of rest. A very simple deduction. In Colossians 2, it says, Let no one judge you in your holy day or your new moon or your Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come. In Hebrews 10, for the law, which includes the Sabbath, having a shadow of good things to come. When you stand outside and you see your shadow, you can see your image on the ground. You can see your arms moving. You know what's going on. But you can't see the color of your skin or your hair. You can't see the color of your clothing. You can't make out your eyes. But you know there's something there. the image of a building or a hawk flying overhead. You can see the shadow. But it doesn't tell you all the details. That's what the holy days reveal. And this is the thing that Satan's trying to hide from you. He doesn't want you to know the plan of Yahweh, the plan of salvation, which is revealed through the holy days. You know this plan because you talk about it all your lives, but you just haven't connected all the dots. Passover is when the firstborn were killed in Egypt. The lamb was killed on Passover, and the lamb was the Messiah. You know this. Hindsight is 20/20. We can see these things. Another day is the days of unleavened bread. Paul talks about get the leaven out of your life. Get sin out of your life. That's what the days of unleavened bread is talking about. Getting sin out of your life. Another day that we know very easily, Pentecost. Pentecost was the day that the Ten Commandments were given from the Mount Sinai by Yahweh. He yelled down. The Israelites got scared. They had to go change their clothes, their pants, and come back and tell Moses, please don't let them talk to us anymore. Pentecost is also the time the Holy Spirit was given to the apostles on the day of Pentecost. So these days are things that have happened in the past, and there's going to be special events happen on these days in the future. What they are, we need to learn. But there's more holy days. The Feast of Trumpets. That day is a very special day, and I'm going to show you something about it tonight. It is the day the Messiah was born. Why would he let the Messiah be born on just any random day that had no special meaning? But he picked a very special day for him to be born. And it's on this day, and I will show you that in a little bit later. The Feast of Trumpets also shows you when he's going to return. It's also the beginning of judgment. The Day of Atonement is the day when judgment is finished. It's also the day when Satan is locked away and the millennium is to start. These are what things that the holy days teach us. The Feast of Tabernacles, another special time. It's a wedding between the bride and the groom, Yeshua and his bride, Israel. That's when the wedding takes place, on this day. It's a 7-day celebration or 7-year celebration. The 8th day, the great white throne judgment. It's also the time when Yahweh will come and dwell with man on earth. These are all significant events, and they're all going to happen in the future. And by keeping the holy days, you learn about these things in more detail. Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, when you come into the land which I give you, then shall the land keep a Sabbath unto the Lord. So now we've done the Sabbath, we've done the holy days. Now we're getting into the sabbatical year, which is what I'm going to be talking about tonight. These things all lead up to it, and they all interconnect together. Right? What you're reading here is a very huge clue. When you come into the land shall keep a Sabbath. So the first year you enter the land is a sabbatical year. 6 years you shall sow thy field, and 6 years you shall prune thy vineyard and gather in the fruit. But in the 7th year shall be a sabbatical year of rest. So now, from that first year, which is a sabbatical year, you count 7 years. Another huge clue. Because there's only one time when you have the first year as a sabbatical year. And I'll explain that later. You're allowed to harvest the crops that grow that year for what you need, but you can't harvest them to put away for the winter. You can only take what you need for supper that night or the next day. Anyone who is on your land can help themselves to your fruit trees or to your garden. It is open for everybody. It's what it means. It's a special time of year. It's open for all the poor, for everyone to reap. Now here's a little demonstration of the 7th-day Sabbath, the weekly 7th-day Sabbath, symbolical of the sabbatical year, every 7th year. It's also symbolical of the 7th millennium, which is the year of a millennium of rest. So every 7th year, every 7th day, every 7th millennium is a rest period. This is just to show you that the days translate into years so that you can understand it. In verse 8, you shall number 7 times, so number 7 Sabbaths of years unto thee, 7 times 7 years, until you get to 49 years. And in the 49th year, on the 10th day of the 7th month, which is the Day of Atonement, you shall sound the shofar. And you shall announce that the 50th year is about to come. The Day of Atonement is not the beginning of the 50th year. The 50th year in every year begins at Aviv, which is March, April, when the barley is seen. When that barley is seen, that's when the year begins in March, April, 14 days before Passover. It does not begin in September on Rosh Hashanah. That is not the beginning of the year. And it does not begin the 50th Jubilee on the Day of Atonement. That's just a warning so that you don't plant your crops in the winter and not be able to harvest them that next spring. This is a Jubilee year. The 50th year is the Jubilee year. It shall be holy to you. You shall eat the increase thereof out of the field, but you will not harvest it. Here's a demonstration. Every year we keep Pentecost. We count 50 days for Pentecost. We have 1 to 7. 1 to 7, you do that 7 times. On the 49th day is the day after the 49th day, which is a Sabbath, is Pentecost, the 50th day. The 50th day also lands on the first day of the week. So the first day of the week and the 50th day are the same day. This is important to understand when you're counting the Jubilee. You count by 49s. You don't count by 50. If you count by 50s, you're getting up with the wrong date. So when you do the 50th Jubilee, you count 7 sabbatical years, the 49th year, and then the 50th year is also the first year in the next count. But it's also a holy year. That's why that clue was so important. So where do we start? How do we figure out when the Jubilee year is? Yahweh tells us that when you enter the land, you are to count 6 years. And then the 7th year is a year of rest. He also told you that the first year is a sabbatical year, a year of rest. So the year Joshua enters the promised land, we have to figure that out because that's a Jubilee year. So what do we do? From Adam to the birth of Abraham, everyone's done the chronology, it adds up to be 1948 years. So when he leaves Haran in Genesis 12, that's Abraham was 75 years old. But he walked down through Canaan, wandered around, settled down, and then it got drought and he went into Egypt. In chapter 13, he leaves Egypt with Lot. Their flocks get bigger, they have a fight, and they split. Lot goes to Sodom. Abram stays in the land of Canaan. In chapter 14, Lot is attacked by the Assyrian armies from the north and taken captive. Abram goes after him and captures him back. He takes his tithe and gives it to Melchizedek. Chapter 15 is when the covenant is made. The reason I'm explaining this is because Paul says 430 years after the covenant is when the Exodus took place. This is important to know, but we aren't able to figure it out. Most people start the 430 years from the 75, from when Abram was 75. It just doesn't work. So in chapter 15, the covenant is made by Yahweh when he walks between the 2 pieces of meat. Yahweh made a promise that Abram's descendants would inherit all of this. So they try to hurry things up, try to help move Yahweh's plan along, and they give Hagar to Abraham to conceive a child. She does, Ishmael. Then in chapter 17, Abram and Ishmael are circumcised. So now we have another number that we can use. Abram was 99 and Ishmael was 13 when they were circumcised. So you subtract that, you subtract 1 more for Hagar being pregnant, and you have 85. So now we have 2 dates. Between 75 and 85 is when the covenant was made, but we're not told exactly when. We're given another clue in Genesis 15:13. They will be mistreated 400 years in a country not their own. Abraham's descendants would be mistreated 400 years. So the 400 years and the 430 years end on the same day, on the day of Exodus. Isaac was born when Abram was 100. This was 2048 after creation. But we're given another clue. The child grew and was weaned, and Abram made a great feast the same day that Isaac was weaned. That's like a Jewish bar mitzvah now. Most children around 12 or 13 are given a bar mitzvah. So this would be the first bar mitzvah. Sarah saw the son of Hagar, the Egyptian, which she had borne unto Abram, mocking. Now when you read other books about this, it's more than mocking. Ishmael was about to kill Isaac because he was jealous because he didn't get the big bar mitzvah party. So they chased him out. So it's from the time of his bar mitzvah that he's being persecuted by Ishmael from then on. So I've made 2 assumptions. And I'm going to tell you them up front so you know, and you can disagree if you want. But I'm going to say that Abram was 80 years old when he made the covenant with Yahweh. I'm going to say that Isaac was 10. And when you add both those years up, the year of the Exodus works out to be 2458. That doesn't prove that I'm right. What has to prove that I'm right is that they both end up as Joshua entering the promised land on a Jubilee year. So most people then add on to that 40 years wandering in the wilderness, and they don't get it right. What they miss is Numbers 10, verse 11. And it came to pass on the 20th day of the second month in the second year that the cloud was taken up off the tabernacles of the testimony. The cloud raised up from Mount Sinai and went to the wilderness of Paran, 2 years after the Exodus. It's from the wilderness of Paran that the 12 spies were sent up into the land of Canaan, and they came back with an evil report. And that's when the 40 years punishment began. So now when we add things up, 2458 for the Exodus after the creation of Adam, plus 2 plus 40 equals 2500. 2499 divided by 49 is 51 Jubilees. The year after the 49th year would be 2500. This works out to be exactly right on the money. So the year that Joshua entered the promised land was 2500, which was a Jubilee year. And everything that I've told you so far fits perfectly. Problem is, from Joshua until the time of the kings of Israel, we don't know an exact chronology, and things get mixed up. So this is a problem. We can't carry this on through time. It does not work right. But there is certain dates that we do know about that do list all known sabbatical years. 456 in Nehemiah 8:18, he read the entire law during the Feast of Tabernacles. And that's only done during a 7th year sabbatical year. 456, and each of these dates is proven to be a sabbatical year by Kadesh Yahweh Press. It's a 420 some odd page booklet. It's free. It's online. Sabbatical years and Jubilee cycles. They take each of the theories that are put out there by chronologists, and it's a tremendous read. It's a great read, and it proves each of these years correct. Some try to twist these years by starting the year at Tishri, Rosh Hashanah. The year begins at Aviv. And that's important to know, because when you do this, it must add up. When you take each of these years and you count by 7, each one fits the chronology precisely. When you go by 50, none of them work. You must go by 7s or 49s or some multiple of 7 to make it all fit. When you're doing your chronology, remember there is no year 0. It goes 3, 2, 1, 1, 2, 3. That's 5 spaces, not 6. So that makes a difference when you're doing your math. Just remember that. So when we count this all up again, I'm going to tell you, you count by 49s. The 50th day is the first day in the next cycle of years, or in Pentecost. They're both the same. Pentecost Sunday is Sunday. It's the first day of the next week. We start the count towards Pentecost in Leviticus 23. It says, after the Sabbath. The word Sabbath is Strong's word 7676. It means weekly Sabbath. If it meant a high holy day, as some people teach, the word would have been 7677, which is the word Sabbathon. So you begin your count to Pentecost the day after the weekly Sabbath, which is a Sunday. And that's why Pentecost is always on a Sunday. Now, respected chronologist Edwin R. Thiel wrote the book, The Mysterious Numbers of the Hebrew Kings. And in it he states there are only 2 dates in all of Hebrew chronology that can be confirmed with outside sources. One of those dates is the Battle of Karkar in 853 BC. That's the one where Ahab dies, and it's confirmed by Assyrian chronologists. The other date is 701 BC when Sennacherib comes and attacks Hezekiah in his 14th year. Why is this important? Well, the Assyrians had 4 chronologies called eponym, and they go from 911 BC to 701 BC, and they overlap each other, and they list the kings and the governors. And when they overlap, they confirm the other lists. In Nineveh, they found another 7 chronologies called Limu, and they go from 722 BC to 660 BC. Again, they list the governors and kings of Assyria, and they overlap each other. Then there's Ptolemy's canon, which is another Babylonian king list from 747 BC to 161 AD. But Ptolemy also had over 80 astronomical events that he records. When we duplicate that today, we can confirm through astronomy that each of these lists is precisely correct. If it wasn't for this list, we wouldn't know where the Israelite kings ever existed, because they only tie into a known list that we can confirm on two occasions, 853 and 701. Here's the key scripture that you want to make note of. 2 Kings 19:29. Yahweh knew that we didn't know how to keep chronology before that time. So he gave us a sign. What is the sign? The Sabbath. It's a sign in your hand and between your eyes. The Sabbath. So he's talking about a Sabbath here. This shall be a sign to you. You shall eat this year what grows of itself, and in the second year what springs from the same. Also in the third year sow and reap, plant vineyards and eat the fruit of them. What's he talking about? This is 701 BC. Hezekiah was dying. Isaiah came to him and told him this is the sign. Rabshakeh, the general for Sennacherib's army, came and read this to Hezekiah. Surrender. We've beaten everyone else. You should surrender too. Hezekiah took it to the temple and gave it to Yahweh. And this is his reply. 185,000 men died that night of the Assyrian army. And Sennacherib went home with his tail between his legs. 701 BC is when this took place. The 49th year you can eat what grows of itself, but you cannot plant. The 50th year you can eat what grows from the same. Again, you cannot plant. You can plant in the third year after that. And this only happens during a 49th and 50th year Jubilee cycle. It does not happen any other time to have 2 years back to back that you cannot plant. So this is a 50th year and a 49th year back to back. And that just so happens to be 701 BC as the 49th year, sabbatical year, and 700 BC as the 50th year Jubilee. What does this all mean? When you do the math and you work it forward, remembering that there is no year zero, that tells you that 1996 was the last Jubilee year. It tells you that 1995 was the year 49. So what? In Genesis 6:3, my spirit shall not strive with man forever. His days shall be 120 years. Now, I don't know too many people that live to be 120 years old. And I used to think that would be an average. Well, it doesn't even work out to be an average. So when you take a look at the word years in Strong's Concordance, the word years can mean periods of time. So 120 periods of time, or 120 Jubilee cycles. So right away people take that and they multiply 120 by 50 to get 6,000 years. And you've all heard that. Except right now they're saying that we're in the year 6008. So we've gone past the 120, so something isn't right. So now all we have to do is add up the years that we know from history to arrive at 120, or that'll tell us where we are in which Jubilee cycle we're in. So from up to the Exodus, we've already figured out 2458. And then from Exodus, just the 4th year of Solomon's reign, when we began to build the temple, was 480 years. So I've taken 2 more years and said that the 6th year of Solomon's reign, to give us an even number of 2940, which will work out to be 60 Jubilee cycles. So to Solomon's 6th year of his reign is 60 Jubilee cycles. So that leaves him with 34 years left. 230 years from 931 to 701 BC, that gives us 5 more Jubilee cycles with 19 extra years. So we have 60 Jubilee cycles, 55 Jubilee cycles from 701 to 1995, 5 more from Solomon to 701 BC, 19 extra years, 13 extra years from 1995 to today. A total of 120 Jubilees plus 32 extra years. Something's not right. We have gone past the time when the Messiah should have returned. So either Yahweh has lied to us, or we've miscalculated our chronology in history. I belong to a chronological group, and they can't figure it out when. I don't contribute to it, I just read what they say. I'm not that sharp. But they say they can't figure out past Solomon. They're even having a hard time figuring out when Solomon was actually here. So I make another assumption. I'm saying that 1996 ended the 119th Jubilee, because we obviously have too many years. So if we have too many, that means we got to be in at least the last one. If we're in the 118th one, then you've got to get rid of a whole bunch more years. I don't know where the mistake is. I'm just making an assumption. I'm telling you up front so that you know. We are in the 119th Jubilee, or 1996 ended the 119th Jubilee. 1996 begins the last Jubilee cycle. We are in the last cycle. So this is my assumption. If you disagree, I would love to hear why. 2008, when you work it out, becomes 5844, 5,844 years after creation. But the Hebrew calendar that the Jews use claim this year to be 5768. Now again, we have a problem. How is this resolved? A difference of 76 years. In Matthew 1, verse 8, we read it, and if you read it carefully, you will see that there are 4 kings left off the list of the Messiah's ancestry. 4 kings. Ahaziah, who reigned 1 year. Athaliah, who reigned 6 years. Jehoash, who reigned 40 years. Amaziah, who reigned 29 years. And lo and behold, they add up to be 76 years. In Deuteronomy it says, if you hate me, I will remove you to the 3rd and 4th generations. And these people did hate Yahweh, and they were removed. Is that why the Jews have taken out the 76 years? I don't know. It sure looks like it. But all the pieces seem to be fitting according to what I'm telling you tonight. So, the next question is, are Yahweh's sabbatical years, are they important? They show chronologically the end time message of the feast days. They are a sign. The feasts reveal the pattern of the biblical prophecies, and that's why we went through them. So you see what's going to happen on those feast days. They're appointments with Yahweh. The Jubilee cycles reveal the 49-year pattern. The feasts reveal the yearly pattern of the Bible prophecies. And when you put them together, you're going to end up understanding what I'm showing you tonight. In Daniel 9:2, the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem. Daniel was reading Jeremiah 25:12, where he says that 70 years were to pass before Judah would be free from the captivity. Jeremiah 29, we are told again about 70 years are to be completed. In 2 Chronicles 36, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, for as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath, to fulfill 70 years. So yes, the sabbatical years are important to Yahweh. He kicked out Judah for not obeying them. And when you take those 427 years, or 70 years of sabbatical, it works out to be 427 years, that will take you back to the time of King David, minimum. So from the time of King David to the captivity of Jerusalem was at minimum 427 years. Very interesting stuff. In Leviticus 26, we are told how Yahweh will bless us for obeying Him. But because we have wooden shoes and wooden heads and wouldn't listen, we're not going to look at the blessings tonight because we just don't keep them. We never kept the Sabbaths, we never kept the holy days, and we certainly haven't kept the sabbatical years. So tonight we're going to look at what's going to happen to us for not obeying them. And this should shake you up. What will happen to us if we do not obey? And you're going to see that the nightly news has been telling you all along that these things have been happening. Ladies and gentlemen, you are that frog in the water and you don't know it. It's getting hotter. And I'm about to show you how hot the water is. Leviticus 26:16. I, Yahweh, will even appoint over you terror. Okay, that's kind of interesting, but what does that mean? In August of 1996, Osama bin Laden declared war on the United States. Nothing happened, but he did declare war. He then declared war again in 1998. In 1998, he blew up the U.S. Embassy in Tanzania and in Kenya. He's now got some bite in his words, and he now moved to the top of the most wanted list of the Americans. In the year 2000, the USS Cole was also attacked. 17 sailors died, 39 were wounded. Another terrorist attack. 9/11 happened, September 11, 2001. And I don't need to tell you what happened on that day. It is our Pearl Harbor. That's this generation's Pearl Harbor. We will not forget what happened that day. I remember the conversation I had at work. I remember where I was working. I remember that my backhoe had just got it the day before, and it had a radio. First time I had a radio in my machine. And I'm listening to it thinking some idiot has flown a plane into a tower in New York. I did not understand what had happened. But I did that night when I went home. Something serious had changed. Our whole life had changed. 9/11 is our Pearl Harbor. Horrible events that we will not forget were on the nightly news for a long time. We will not forget that day. London, England. Remember I told you that Israel consisted of England and the United States? Their 9/11 was called 7/7. 3 subway bombs and 1 bus bombing. 3 weeks later, they had another attempted 4 subway bombings that were aborted. We then had the Spain bombing, the Bali bombing. We had the 17 arrested in Toronto. We had the shoe bomber coming over from England, trying to blow up the planes there. We've had a number of attempts. MSN reported that since you entered Iraq because of this war, we've had over 10,000 bombs or 10,000 terrorist attacks throughout the world in 2006. And there are continuously attacks on the United States today that are being caught and stopped before they even happen. But they don't get reported because it becomes normal. We're getting used to it. We're in the pot of water and we're just getting used to these things happening. I've gone through a number of airport checks here and security is extremely tight, and everywhere, it's even in your domestic country, it's very strict. The pot of water is boiling and you're in it. July 2006, Hezbollah began to fire rockets into Israel. I bought my tickets for Israel at this time. It was a great deal. I knew what I'm about to show you was not the end of the world because of what I'm learning here. I got my tickets for half price. There was no lineups in Israel when I got there. Notice how many people were killed here. Only 44. 3,900 rockets, only 44. What's going on? This is terrorism. It is to scare the civilization. Read this. Hezbollah head Hassan Nasrallah asked, when in any Arab-Israeli conflict were 2 million Israelis forced to flee or enter a bomb shelter? Huge statement. Why? Because of the rest of the first terror attack, or the first terror curse. And I will set my face against you, and you shall be slain before your enemies. They that hate you shall reign over you. And you shall flee when no one pursues you. How prophetic was that? Yahweh put it right there in black and white, long before this event happened. 1995 was the year 49. 1996 was the Jubilee year, and also the year count, the first year in the count to the next Jubilee cycle. And we have terror during that period of time, and it increases. Now, I have a little girl, or I had a little girl, she's now a young lady. When she was little, she used to have a temper tantrum. And her mom would bring her home and tell me to fix it. So I laid out some rules to her. I says, if you're going to do this again, I'm going to spank you on the bum with a wooden spoon. And I said, if you do it again after that, we're going to go up to 3 times, 1 in the bum and 1 in each hand. If you do it again after that, we're going to go to 5. And if you do it again after that, we're going to go to 10. So within a week, she did it, 1 in the bum. Then a little bit later, she did it again, and we went to 3. The next day, she did it again. We went to 5. And I was getting upset. You know, like 5, that's a lot. Wooden spoon. Well, darned if she didn't do it again the next day. She's testing me. So I take her aside, and I got to 6, and I was crying. I couldn't do any more than 5 and threaten 6. But I let her go, and she never did it again. But I've always threatened her. That's the rules in our house. 1, 3, 5, 10. Well, it's the same with Yahweh. If you're going to break His rules, He's going to spank you. And he does it, and he's told us right from the beginning, this is my rules and this is how I'm going to do it. Here's rule number 1. I will send terror upon you. If you don't obey, I will continue to send terror upon you. Plus, I'm going to send the next curse, which is read in Leviticus 26:18. And after all this, if you will not hearken unto me, then I will punish you 7 times more for your sins. 7 times. What does that mean? Well, we read in Daniel that times, time and a half time means 3.5 years. So 7 times, because we're talking about sabbatical years, is a 7-year period of time. So 7 times a 7 year. It can be 7 times multiplied, bigger, stronger, but it means 7 years. And I will break the pride of your power, and I will make your heaven as iron and the earth as brass. And your strength shall be spent in vain, and your land shall not yield her increase, neither shall the trees of the land yield their fruits. The pride of your power. What's he talking about? Your army. The earth shall be as iron, or as brass, and the heaven as iron. When this was going on here in 2006, I have a brand new backhoe. When I put on the backhoe, I put on brand new teeth to dig the earth. And as I'm digging, those teeth usually last me about 1.5 years. I only go down 3 and 4 feet. But as I got down to 5 feet, the ground was so hard that it was burning up my teeth. Why is it so hard? The moisture is being sucked out of the ground. 2005 and 2006 were very, very dry years. This is Australia, 2006. Take a look at the sheep on the left-hand side. Look at their hips. They are dying of thirst. On the right-hand side is a farmer he has just cropped his field. And look how dry it is. It's already turning to dust as the cattle walk over it. Australia has said that the year of 2006 was the worst drought in 1,000 years. Not 100, not 10. The worst drought in 1,000 years. They were in serious trouble. Prime Minister Howard said that the farmers were no longer allowed to take water out of the Darby River. They had to save the water, let it flow down the river so they could go into the cities. So the farmers were selling off their animals at whatever price they could get so the people could have water in the cities. It was a very, very tough time. This is their water supply. The lakes on the left, the ponds on the left are all dried up. Those are big lakes. The gentlemen are showing you how dried up the land is. They have no water for their animals, no water for their crops. This is 2006. The red line shows you the amount of rain that they actually got. 50% of the normal amount. On the drawing on the right, you can see that in July of 2005, how green the wheat fields were. In 2006, 1 year later, you can see how brown they are from the drought. Australia exports about 25% of the world's market in wheat. This is serious stuff. Something was beginning to happen. We were beginning to see something, and it's falling within that period of time that I'm talking about as the drought years, starting after 2003. Here's the United States. The dark brown is severe, extremely severe. Red is less, orange is even less, and yellow is severe drought or abnormally dry conditions. White is normal. 2004. Here's 2005 and 2006. What happened in 2005 to relieve the drought? 3 ladies came to the United States, Rita, Wilma, and Katrina. And you still have not recovered from that. There are still people living underneath bridges down there because of that. Look at the drought conditions. Here's last year, 2007. Remember all the forest fires out in California? Well, watch this spring. They will start to have mudslides everywhere. Okay, that's what's going to happen next. Take a look at Georgia in 2007. Alabama, southern Tennessee, South Carolina. Extremely severe drought. The dark red is exceptionally severe drought. The red is extreme, orange is severe, and yellow is moderate. Take a look on the right, February 2008. I'm talking to you in March. February 12, 2008. Georgia is in trouble. There's supposed to be the rainy season now. You're supposed to be having your aquifers filled up. Your lakes should be getting filled up with rain and snow. Last week was their first rain that I know about, and I was caught in that same system over in Harrisburg. They have a problem in Georgia that has not gone away yet. It has not been fixed by rain. I will make your skies as iron and your fields as brass. I think something is happening, ladies and gentlemen, and you need to wake up. You need to see what's going on. Smell the coffee. It's starting to perk. Something is going on in your country and in mine and in Australia. Remember the country that I talked about as being Israel at the beginning of this lecture. Amos 4. 2 or 3 cities wandered together to one city to drink water, but they were not satisfied. Georgia was in great dispute with all the other cities around it because they wanted the water for their cities. But the federal law in the United States says that they could not stop that water because there's mussels down at the mouth of the river that need the water to survive. People are dying of thirst, but we're going to save the mussels. Something is wrong. You got things mixed up. Here's the atmospheric conditions that tell you just how hot it was getting. Carbon dioxide in the last couple hundred years has shot through the roof. Al Gore talks about this in his movie An Inconvenient Truth. He's not telling you nothing you don't know. And I'm not showing you nothing here tonight that you don't already know. You know this stuff. You just have not put it together. 2005, the hottest year on record. Until we had 2006, which became the hottest year on record. And then 2007 was on schedule to be the hottest year, but I don't think it made it. Of the 10 hottest years ever, 8 of them have happened since 1998. Scary stuff. Something is going on, and are we aware of it? So what happens when you have hot weather? Well, we start to see crops start to fail. This is what's projected to be the temperature in the years to come. It's going to get hotter. World grain production, 1950 to 2006. Looks good. It's going up. A couple little dips now and again, but it's still going up. So everything's under control. But when we look at the world grain production and consumption, we have to look right here where it's crossed over. But it's crossed over in the past a couple times too, and we've recovered. Not a big deal. It's not a big deal until you read the headlines in December and in February. The headlines in December, when I started preparing this, updating this, we've had the biggest grain crop in 2007 than ever. So we've produced more grain than any other year. But we've also consumed more grain than we ever did in any other year. So much grain that we are now at 30-year lows as of December. Pakistan had a wheat crisis in January. They ran out of wheat. They were rationing it. Russia has announced that they are going to not export wheat anymore. They want to form a cartel, just like OPEC for oil. They want to do it for wheat. They want to play with your stomach, and they want to be in charge. Australia's having great grain failures because of the drought. Russia's having great success, but they're withholding it. Something's going on. You're having troubles here as well. Grain production per person, 1950 to 2006. Not bad. It seems to be fairly level, maybe declining a little bit. Not a big deal. But look at right here. World grain stocks, 1960 to 2006. See where that arrow's pointing? That's the peak. It's just before this period of time that I'm talking about, the period of drought. And it goes down and continues to go down. Something is happening, ladies and gentlemen. You need to be aware of what's going on. In 2006, world grain supplies fell to 57 days of extra supply. In 2003, 52,000 Europeans died from heat-related stroke or heat stress. I think it was last summer, Greece had that raging fire race across it. That same year, 2003, Chicago had 200 die from heat. A lot of things are happening all around the world. Grain prices are going through the roof. Here are the grain prices that I picked up just this week. Okay? Coffee, is up 20%. Corn is up 20%. Soybeans is up 25%, and wheat is up 22%. That's in Wednesday's newspaper. Something is happening. The farmers I talked to up in Des Moines, they agree with us. Prices are going through the roof. The grain farmers are getting rich, but the meat farmers are screaming foul because they're going broke. And I'm not telling you anything new here in Kansas. What's going on? Something is happening, and you know it. But now you know why it's coming, because it's being sent by Yahweh. They're turning corn into biofuel, and they want to change it from 10% up to 20%. So farmers are getting rid of their wheat fields and planting corn because it makes more money. So corn goes up, and the farmers that raise beef can't afford to buy corn. So they sell their cattle at loss. The years of drought, 2003 through 2010. Take special note that 2008 and 2009 is where we are now. That is a third-year tithe. Every third and sixth year in a 7-year cycle is a tithe year. It is not a third tithe year, it's a third-year tithe. Make sure that you tithe to the poor. Give it to them directly. Do not give it to a middleman. Do not give it to your church. Go and find the poor, the widow, and the orphan and give it to them directly. That's what this year is to be for. Remember that. Don't rob yourself of a potential blessing. So this is where we are now, and this is where we're headed. It's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And we know it's going to get hotter because we read in Revelations that the sun scorched men and they cursed Yahweh. And the sun was also 1/3 blocked out. So it's going to get hotter. The Euphrates River is going to dry up. It's going to get hotter. And Leviticus 26, we now start into the third curse. If you will walk contrary unto me and will not hearken unto me, I will bring 7 times more plagues upon you according to your sins. Another 7-year period of time. This time he's talking about plagues. This is where it's going to start to get ugly. And I, Yahweh, will also send wild beasts among you, which shall rob you of your children, and destroy your cattle, and make you few in number. And your highways